Where did we leave off?
15 pages from the end.
Oh, that's right.
205.
Yeah, now we're into at least the good part, which is rather curious. Stephanus number?
Stephanus 131D. Friday night meeting, first Alcibiades.
Okay. Let me raise a question for you.
Oh, we're about 131D, 132A, somewhere right there.
2. So, from this point on, how does Socrates reach a conclusion? Right? How does he do it? He brings Alcibiades along with him. What do you think of the trip? Like, look. There's Socrates drinking coffee. And here's Alcibiades with a soda. And they're reasoning. And then they reach a conclusion. What do you think of the conclusions? Are there gaps in the reasoning? If there are, can you identify them and link them all together? That's all. So get a couple of readers, and when you see a gap, raise your hand, but not your foot. I'll get a couple of dialogue, a couple of people to dialogue. Come on. Yeah? Yeah? 1, 2, good. Want to come up or do it from there?
I have a jowlet. The one I have is jowlet.
You have jowlet.
Is that wrong?
Jowlet doesn't count.
Oh no. Is there another one?
Might be fun to see two different translations simultaneously. Come on up. Come on.
So jowlet's no good, huh?
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I gotta get my other glove.
It's towards the end, though.
What's the Stephanus?
132A.
132? Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah, okay, we got through that. Yeah, go ahead.
Then the reason was that I was the only lover of you, whereas the rest were lovers of what is yours, and that is passing its prime, while you are beginning to bloom. So now, if you are not blighted and deformed by the Athenian people, I shall never forsake you. For my chiefest fear is of your being corrupted by becoming a lover of the people, since many a good Athenian has come to that ere now. For fair of face is the people of great-hearted Erechtheus, but you should get a view of it stripped. So take the precaution that I recommend.
What is it?
Exercise yourself first, my wonderful friend, in learning what you ought to know before entering on politics. You must wait till you have learnt, in order that you may be armed with an antidote, and so come to no harm.
Your advice seems to me good, Socrates, but try to explain in what way we can take pains over ourselves.
Well, we have made one step in advance, for there is a pretty fair agreement now as to what we are, whereas we were afraid we might fail of this and take pains without knowing it over something other than ourselves.
That is so.
And the next step we see is to take care of the soul and look to that.
Clearly.
While handing over to others the care of our bodies and our coffers.
Quite so.
Then how shall we obtain the most certain knowledge of it? For if we know that, it seems we shall know ourselves also. In heaven's name, do we fail to comprehend the wise words of the Delphic inscription, which we mentioned just now?
With what intent do you say that, Socrates?
I will tell you what I suspect to be the real advice which that inscription gives us. I rather think there are not many illustrations of it to be found, but only in the case of sight.
What do you mean by that?
Considering your turn, suppose that instead of speaking to a man, it said to the eye of one of us as a piece of advice, "See thyself." How should we apprehend the meaning of the admonition? Would it not be that the eye should look at something in looking at which it would see itself?
Clearly.
Then let us think what object there is anywhere, by looking at which we can see both it and ourselves.
Why, clearly, Socrates, mirrors and things of that sort.
Quite right. And there is also something of that sort in the eye that we see with?
To be sure.
And have you observed that the face of the person who looks into another's eye is shown in the optic confronting him as in a mirror? And we call this the pupil. For in a sort, it is an image of the person looking.
That is true.
Then an eye viewing another eye and looking at the most perfect part of it, the thing wherewith it sees, will thus see itself.
Apparently.
But if it looks at any other thing in man, or at anything in nature but what resembles this, it will not see itself.
That is true.
Then if an eye is to see itself, it must look at an eye, and at that region of the eye in which the virtue of an eye is found to occur, and this, I presume, is sight.
That is so.
And if the soul too, my dear Alcibiades, is to know herself, she must surely look at a soul, and especially at that region of it in which occurs the virtue of the soul, wisdom, and at any other part of the soul which resembles this.
I agree, Socrates.
And can we find any part of the soul that we can call more divine than this, which is the seat of knowledge and thought?
We cannot.
Then this part of her resembles God. And whoever looks at this and comes to know all that is divine will gain thereby the best knowledge of himself.
Apparently.
And self-knowledge we admitted to be temperance.
To be sure.
So if we have no knowledge of ourselves and no temperance, shall we be able to know our own belongings, good or evil?
How can that be, Socrates?
For I expect it seems impossible to you that without knowing Alcibiades, you should know that the belongings of Alcibiades are in fact his.
Impossible indeed, upon my words.
Nor could we know that our belongings are ours if we did not even know ourselves.
How could we?
And so, if we did not so much as know our belongings, we could not know the belongings of our belongings either.
Apparently not.
Then we were not quite correct in admitting just now that there are people who, without knowing themselves, know their belongings. while others know their belongings. For it seems to be the function of one man and one art to discern all three, himself, his belongings, and the belongings of his belongings.
It looks like it.
And anyone who is ignorant of his belongings will be similarly ignorant, I suppose, of the belongings of others.
Quite so.
And if ignorant of others' affairs, he will be ignorant also of the affairs of states.
He must be.
Then such a man can never be a statesman.
No, indeed.
No, nor an economist either.
No, indeed.
Nor will he know what he is doing.
No, I agree.
And will not he who does not know make mistakes?
To be sure.
And when he makes mistakes, will he not do ill, both in private and in public?
Of course.
And doing badly, he will be wretched.
Yes, very.
And what of those for whom he is doing so?
They will be wretched also.
Then it is impossible to be happy if one is not temperate and good.
Impossible.
So it is the bad men who are wretched.
Yes, very.
And hence it is not he who has made himself rich that is relieved of wretchedness, but he who has made himself temperate.
Apparently.
So it is not walls or warships or arsenals that cities need, Alcibiades, if they are to be happy, nor numbers, nor size without virtue.
No, indeed.
And if you are to manage the city's affairs properly and honorably, you must impart virtue to the citizens.
Of course.
But could one possibly impart a thing that one had not?
How indeed?
Then you or anyone else who is to be governor and curator, not merely of himself and his belongings in private, but of the state and its affairs, must first acquire virtue himself.
That is true.
Hence, it is not license or authority for doing what one pleases that you have to secure to yourself or the state, but justice and temperance.
Apparently.
For you and the state, if you act justly and temperately, will act so as to please God.
Naturally.
And as we were saying in what went before, you will act with your eyes turned on what is divine and bright.
Apparently.
Well, and looking thereon, you will behold and know both yourselves and your good.
Yes.
And so you will act rightly and well.
Yes.
Well now, if you act in this way, I'm ready to warrant that you must be happy.
And I can rely on your warranty.
But if you act unjustly, with your eyes on the godless and dark, the probability is that your acts will resemble these through your ignorance of yourselves.
That is probable.
For if a man, my dear Alcibiades, is at liberty to do what he pleases, but is lacking in mind, what is the probable result to him personally or to the state as well? For instance, if he is sick and at liberty to do what he pleases, without a medical mind, but with a tyrant's power, which prevents anyone from even reproving him, what will be the result? Will not his health in all likelihood be shattered?
That is true.
Again, in a ship, if a man were at liberty to do whatever he likes, but were devoid of mind and excellence in navigation, do you perceive what must happen to him and his fellow sailors?
I do. They must perish.
And in just the same way, if a state or any office or authority is lacking in excellence or virtue, it will be overtaken by failure?
It must.
Then it is not tyrannical power, my admirable Alcibiades, that you ought to secure, either to yourself or to the state, if you would be happy, but virtue.
That is true.
And before getting virtue, to be governed by a superior is better than to govern, for a man as well as a child.
Apparently.
And the better is also nobler?
Yes.
And the nobler more becoming?
Of course.
Then it becomes a bad man to be a slave, since it is better.
Yes.
So vice is a thing that becomes a slave.
Apparently.
And virtue becomes a free man.
Yes.
And we should shun, my good friend, all slavishness?
Most certainly, Socrates.
And do you now perceive how you stand? Are you on the side of the free or not?
I think I perceive only too clearly.
Then do you know how you may escape from the condition in which you now find yourself? let us not give it a name where a handsome person is concerned.
I do.
How?
If it be your wish, Socrates.
That is not well said, Alcibiades.
Well, what should I say?
If it be God's will.
Then I say it. And yet I say this besides, that we are like to make a change in our parts, Socrates, so that I shall have yours and you mine. For from this day onward it must be the case that I am your attendant, and that you have me always in attendance on you.
Ah, generous friend. So my love will be just like a stork. For after hatching a winged love in you, it is to be cherished in return by its nestling.
Well, that is the position, and I shall begin here and now to take pains over justice.
I should like to think you will continue to do so. Yet I am apprehensive, not from any distrust of your nature, but in view of the might of the state, lest it overcome both me and you.
Thank you. Hey.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oops, excuse me.
It's all good? It all follows? Are there gaps in it?
Yeah.
Try this. Could you use this dialogue to achieve what it's required?
No.
The quest for wisdom? How would you do it?
Stare into somebody's eyes.
Pardon me?
You stare into somebody's eyes.
Yes.
That's a good start.
More.
You learn
Come on,
what
let's find out.
belongs to you.
Yes, more?
You learn what belongs to you and how that's different from you.
What does it depend upon?
The good of the state, and the good of yourself, and the good of the people you love.
I didn't give.
The good of the state, the good of yourself, and the good of the people you love.
Yeah, but you're leaving out that justice and temperance part, aren't you, Dave?
Well, that's just because he turns out to be an immoderate tyrant.
Well, but how about yourself?
I beg your pardon.
Well, if your answer is not complete and you're blurting them out one after another and you're leaving out important virtues, then what does it have to say about yourself?
I thought I addressed that.
Temperance and justice left out?
Yeah.
Pierre, remember the question?
Okay, well, here's my problem. I said no in the first place. I said no in the first place because he gives you a great metaphor and a great analogy about how to know yourself. And Pierre's question was, if you did that, would you be able to get to the state of temperance and virtue and further things that he suggested? And my answer was no. He didn't give any methodology about how sight works with the respect to vision and respect to the object of sight. Mm-hmm. And no knowledge about how sight sees soul. This reading, I've heard other readings. This reading, how sight can see soul, and I think he did a really weak job there. And that if you wanted to do what Alcibiades needed to do, that would be a great book. If you wanted to do what you asked, I'd say it needs some work.
Okay, let me give a challenge. Go to 133. This is where he applies the analogy he created. And so, my dear Alcibiades, the soul too, if she is to know herself, right? If she is to know herself, must look at the soul. More than that, and especially the region of which wisdom exists in the soul. Which is the virtue of the soul. Right? That's where wisdom resides. And we can say that any region of the soul is more divine than that which is the seat of knowledge and understanding. It resides there. It's the seat of knowledge and understanding.
Yes.
Hey, this region of the soul then, most godlike. And one who looked at this and came to know all that is divine, right, then God is wisdom. And therefore one would gain the most knowledge of her, right? Shall we say then that just as mirrors are pure and are cleaner, pure, and brighter than the mirror in the eye, so God is the pure and brighter and the best that is in our soul. Right? So therefore, all of that resides in the best part of the soul. Looking at God, therefore, we should use His most beautiful mirror among human affairs so that we can look at the virtue of the soul. And just as a consequence, know ourselves. How do you do it? Yeah, go ahead, volunteer. Look here. If you have to see something, should you not know how to see it?
Of course.
Well then, okay, how would you do it?
You would turn the soul towards itself, towards the most divine part of it.
Pardon me. Do you have a soul?
Yeah.
Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Where's the higher part of it? How would you see the higher part of it?
By turning it towards itself.
By what?
By having it look into itself, turning it towards itself.
What?
No.
Yeah.
You don't mean that literally. Now, how would you look at... Oh, okay. It's perfectly obvious. Excuse me. Okay. That's why everybody does it and can do it. Right?
I think everyone can do it. I just don't think they're doing it.
What?
Well, I was just iterating that I think they can do it, they're just not doing it.
Go ahead. Anyone? What?
I would practice meditation.
Then anyone who practices meditation does it, gets it.
No, I didn't say that.
Then it's, what else do you have to do besides sit on your butt?
I'd distinguish between what's wrong, what's not, wisdom and truth and all those good things while I'm meditating.
Oh, you have to see what's not.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Okay. Okay. Does that make any sense? Okay. Does that make any sense? You have to. You then see what is not.
What is not?
And then you finally see what it is by first seeing what it's not. By the way, how do you know that it's not?
How would you know it's not? Anyway?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I need some help. How would you know what is not?
Well, I was just following Igmar's suggestion.
Point, but what is it anymore? What is
Like
what are you calling, or what are you seeing what's not?
distinguishing the pathologos from a real state of mind. What it's not would be the pathologos.
Okay,
I'm not saying I've done that.
okay, it's clear then.
I suspect that's the direction.
Yeah. David?
Well, I may stand corrected a bit. He throws out a few hints, doesn't he? I mean, he's got a whole list of things which I can remember being recited, but I can't read right now. Over there on the left-hand side, things, a list of vocabulary that needs to be investigated. He also says that if you knew God the way you can know God as something that's wise, which, by the way, is really cool because he has no hesitation to admit that he has a soul or that there are things divine. But those are hints. That's about all he gives.
Well, okay, then this is sufficient. Right? This is sufficient.
Nah.
No?
Nah.
Okay, you got to do philosophical midwifery.
What about it?
Discover what your ignorance is.
Pardon me.
This is more like a Zen school of just do it, right? Like if you look at 134D, it says keep your eyes turned.
Are you going outside of the text to come to a solution for the text?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, I think that goes to your gaps.
Is that a gap?
Yeah.
What's the gap?
Method.
That what?
That which solves our personal problems. Midwifery. Your midwifery.
See, this is no argument against what is being said. The question is, does the author give you the steps necessary to do it and achieve it? That's all. That's what we're asking. So that's all.
No, he doesn't.
Why?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know. Just give an answer without knowing what you're saying.
Well, you ask me why Plato doesn't? I don't know.
Well, or this is enough and we're just foolish.
What? Foolish?
Well, I mean, if this is enough to look for something more, it would be foolish, would it not? And then everybody should be able to do it.
Well, another side is that, right, you would look within the seat of the soul, and once you encountered what he's describing, it seems like it would be obvious.
Okay. David, jump in.
Yeah, in support of what Ingmar's saying, if you describe what's going on and it creates a problem, something you recognize that might even be a block or cause problems to others, you usually seek out a midwife talk if you're a smart dude around here. What if you could do preemptive midwifery and be able to diagnose somebody's problem as intemperance and tyranny, and suggest that when those things occur, through lack of proper preparation and training of the soul, if that's the potential, then it would be, we could still call this dialogue obstetric or Noetic, having to do with birthing. I think Socrates birthed an idea that was potential in Alcibiades.
Okay, let me add another one then, all right? In the dialogue, what is the obstacle that Socrates sees that may block Alcibiades achieving this?
The people.
The people, the state.
The might of the city, yeah.
Right? That certainly makes sense, doesn't it? Because, yeah, that makes sense.
Is that like peer pressure?
The question is, what does Socrates think will prevent Alcibiades from achieving this goal?
The love of the people.
He says the will of the people.
The love of the people.
Or sometimes he just uses the word the state. That makes sense, doesn't it? The reason why people can't achieve such a goal is they meet the opposition of the will of the people. Is that right? Yeah, okay.
Well, not just the opposition. It says at 132a that he might be blighted and deformed by the Athenian people. By becoming a lover of the people, he might be corrupted.
Take a look. Take a look. Last line. Want to read it for us?
Well, I was reading from 132a, but Pierre's directing us to 135b, which is the last paragraph.
I would like also to continue, but I am shuddering, not from any mistrust of your nature, but from viewing the strength of the state, lest it prevail over both me and you.
So then he thinks the Alcibiades has the character to do it, but
the peer pressure is so strong.
But the strength of the will of the people is too much. Is that right?
Yeah, to be yourself.
For what?
For you to be yourself.
Therefore?
Be yourself. Know thyself.
Yeah, to know yourself.
Look here. How important is the word, two words, for us in the conclusion? Is he just saying that about Alcibiades? Hey, you got a great character, but the will of the state is so strong that you're not going to be able to succeed.
No, for us, me.
That's personal. That's him only.
Right. No. It says me and
If it says we, then what is he saying about both of them?
That you can do a lot of harm to your friends.
Well, that just as in the apology, he's going to be killed before he can help.
That even if you have the character, even if Socrates has the character, he may not be able to achieve this because of the will of the people. Is that right? Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
No.
No?
Not at all.
Well, why don't you tell me about it?
Well, why would that follow?
But not only that, is that consistent with the apology? Does Socrates maintain his character throughout and achieve this, even though the will of the people is against him?
yes.
Well, what do you think of the conclusion?
It's strange.
Thank you. What's the word for it? Strange.
Weird.
Weird. Now you're getting close to reading it. Let's try another one. At around 130, end of 134, maybe D. For both you and the city, if you act justly and wisely, will act in accordance with the will of God. Point. Next. And as we said before, you will act thus by looking at that which is divine and splendid. What does it depend upon?
What does what depend upon?
The success of this venture. What I just read. What does it depend upon? For if you in the city, if you act justly and wisely, will act in accordance with the will of God, what does it depend upon?
Going for the bright light.
Looking, having your eyes turned on what is divine and bright?
That's true. That didn't answer the question. Please go to the end of the dialogue again.
Acting justly and sensibly.
About what?
Acting justly and...
Could be. See that line? And you know how to escape from your present condition? Not to mention it before a gentleman. I do. How? If you wish it, Socrates. That is not well said, Alcibiades. What ought I to say then? In your text, what's the next line?
If it be God's will.
Thank you. What does it depend upon?
The will of God?
Thank you. That makes sense, doesn't it? No. That's the wrong person again.
That sounds pretty sucky.
Can you read that section again, please?
What? That sounds pretty sucky.
I think it makes sense.
Well, no, because the will of God is something that you have no control over. You're kind of lucky if you get it. And I had a friend named Larry Murphy who said, if it's luck, then we're all losers. I mean, how else are you going to get the will of God on your side?
How will you know whether you are acting in respect to the will of God?
You have to.
That's there, isn't it? Or is that a missing piece?
Looking into the divine and bright.
No, that is a missing piece.
Oh, I bet you can get more missing pieces. That right?
Well, he doesn't say to follow your daimon, for instance, even though he's following his.
Well, okay. Is that different if he follows a daimon versus if God wills? That's a more difficult one.
Socrates doesn't seem to think it's different, since he is willing to credit his actions to following his daimon.
Pardon me?
I said Socrates doesn't appear to me to think that that's different, following your daimon and following God, since he's willing to say he's the just man, he's been just, he's never done anybody any wrong his whole life, he's ready to go to the next world, and he follows his daimon regularly.
No, he forgot to add that here.
That's true.
Would it have helped?
Be more clear.
Are all of these gaps filled in some other dialogue?
See, that's the problem. Socrates.
If so, what do you make of this dialogue? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Socrates never did time. You know, sitting in prison and thinking about things gave him the opportunity to reflect on the course of his life, and he realized that in every way possible he followed whatever divine advice he could get. Apparently, the Delphic Oracle was pretty proud of the guy, and so he follows the will of God, and as I think, and
see, you can follow the will of God. That's different than if God wills.
Yeah, well, that sounds shitty.
Yeah, keep going.
Well, it's just like, thanks, God. Glad to know you're there. I thought divinity was something you found in your soul and then saw it on its highest level.
Well, then, let me give you another riddle then. How about the end of 130? End of 130. That great paragraph often referred to in literature. The self of selves, or the self itself. that which was said just now in some such manner as this. Now here's the quote. That first of all, the self of selves what does that mean? Would have to be investigated. But now instead of that, we have investigated the nature of the individual self. This is what we should explore, but instead we've been exploring the individual self. And perhaps that will be enough. For we could not say anything was more truly ourselves than the soul. What does that mean? This is what we should study. Would you agree a bunch of you have, Miss, do you have a self? Oh, you have one?
Yeah.
Then what would the self of selves be? Got it? Probably so. What would that be?
It sounds to me like world self, world soul.
What?
It sounds akin to when we talk about world soul, it would be the world self.
A world soul, right? The self of souls. That's what we should study. But we've been doing this. And if you want to do this, at least you'll get into the nature of the soul. But this is the world soul, or the soul of all souls, or the self of all souls.
For being.
Therefore,
Got to go higher.
what are we doing?
Baby steps.
Are we taking on the right assignment, or
No.
is that a gap?
Yes.
Is there something strange going on here?
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Not that it may not be true. The question is, does he give you the necessary connections of how to do it so that you can then get to the conclusion? Hey, the conclusion is great. How's the steps getting to it?
1, 2, 3.
No steps.
4.
Missing?
Yes.
That's minor.
No.
No?
Well, I don't think he's made no steps.
I agree.
Distinguishing what's yours from what yourself is, looking to the self, and then looking to the self itself, realizing that there's a hierarchy, and taking the rest of the ride.
Then he might need a sentence that goes, but if you truly know the individual soul, then you will know the self of all selves. Or you have to know something in addition to that to go to the self of all selves.
That's a gap.
That's a gap. Yeah.
It doesn't mean he doesn't take any steps.
Yeah. Well, we got a few. Now we should get a little more. We're now going to get a beautiful description of what it is to know the self. at 132. And that ends up at looking at someone else's eye, and looking in the pupil of the eye, you can see an image of yourself. Remember that one? Mm-hmm. That really works, doesn't it?
I haven't tried it.
What?
Well,
No? I asked the wrong person again.
Yeah.
no, you can see an image of your body in someone else's eye, but I don't think you're going to see your own eye. I'd like to try it. Because that's what.
Are you sure about that?
You can see your eye in someone else's eye.
You mean there's another gap?
I have trouble following that.
You can? Let me try.
Well,
Let's try.
is that another gap?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I can do it.
Is that another gap? Yes or no?
Oh, I don't know. How's it a gap?
You can see somebody's eye.
Let me check.
Well, but right, that's he's setting up the analogy for the soul, right? I didn't understand how you're supposed to look at like how that translates to the soul. Like you're supposed to look at another soul or look within the soul.
Socrates and Alcibiades. Got two souls.
Well, how the eye can reflect. Just as the eye reflects, anyway, it seems it's not clear to me. Yeah.
Alcibiades came late to the symposium. Alcibiades came late to the symposium.
Yeah.
He missed the part about lying close enough to see in somebody's eyes, and then using that as a line. Which, if you're that close already, is probably going to get you late. But yeah.
I like that. We got 2 more paragraphs.
Wait. Yeah,
I'm at 132.
Wait. What's the problem with the eye? See?
There is?
What's the problem?
Well, you already mentioned it. Why ask me?
I like it. So
I like it too.
What's the gap you see?
No. Didn't you mention in a certain attitude that, good heavens, the only thing you see when you look at someone else's eye is the physical body and not the soul?
Yes, but then Regina persuaded me that you could see your own eye too.
It functions like a mirror.
What?
The eye functions like a mirror.
Yeah, and the mirror always reflects the soul.
No, it's an
Oh, no, it doesn't.
No, it's an analogy that the soul.
Louder.
That the soul.
Therefore, you get a great deal by looking into a mirror or in someone's eye because they see the soul.
No. It's the reflective part of the eye. It's the best part of the eye.
Oh, okay.
The part of the eye which contains the virtue of the eye.
And that's all you need.
Analogy.
And that's all you need to see the soul. I agree.
No.
No?
It's an analogy.
That's not enough?
We got to unpack it.
Well, go ahead.
It's not to see the soul through your eye.
You must look into the best part of the soul, analogously, where wisdom and virtue reside. That's good. And it's that part which is...
I'm called Pierre the Agreeable, since I agree with so many people.
Okay.
But did that give you enough information to use it as a yoga, as a steps?
Maybe we need a little bit more.
What did you say?
I think we need a little bit more.
Okay.
But I think it's worth trying.
Well, I'll give you some more, okay? 32 CD. In what way, therefore, can we know the soul most clearly? For knowing this, it seems, we shall know ourselves. Heavens, can it be that we do not understand the excellent meaning of the Delphic Oracle? Because everybody understands the Delphic Oracle. Know thyself? Yeah, everybody understands that. And how to do it, don't they? No? Well, that's minor. That's minor. It's the next paragraph. I will tell you what I suspect to be the meaning. and the counsel with which this inscription has for us. For I venture to think that an illustration of it is to be found not everywhere, but only in the sight. He says, forget about know thyself, see thyself. And from that he concludes, does he not? Therefore, to see the self, take a look at the soul. And that certainly fits, doesn't it? No? Again? Is there a gap? Oh. You mean he has a very good way of describing what it takes to see your physical form, but there's a gap when you apply that to the spiritual? Oh. Well.
Wait, is the gap?
Oh, okay.
Hold on. Are we saying, what's the gap? Like,
Yeah, what's the gap?
because the how is not explained, that's the gap?
Watch. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Well, he describes what you're supposed to do.
What?
He describes what you're supposed to do in the soul. He doesn't just talk about the body level.
That's true.
So he makes an
That's true.
analogical relationship.
Yeah. Therefore, that includes how, doesn't it?
Well, he gives a
That includes how, doesn't it?
well. I see he gives a how.
Well, go ahead, give me a couple.
Yes.
Well, this region of the soul then is most
No. What are you going to give me?
a quote.
How you achieve that goal. Good.
Then this region of the soul then it.
What page? I don't care. Yours.
101. So
It's 133B.
133B.
What page is that?
100. 101. 101.
Go ahead.
This region of the soul then it is most like to God, and one who looked at this and came to know all that is divine, God and all wisdom, would thus gain most knowledge of himself. And it's much like that's what you would have to do in order to know the soul herself, by looking at that part of the soul in which wisdom and in virtue reside.
Yeah.
And in doing that, shall we not say then that just as mirrors are clearer, and brighter than the mirror in the eye, so God is purer and brighter than the best that is in our soul? And then looking at God, therefore, we should use his most beautiful mirror, and among human affairs we should look at the virtue of the soul, and thus we may see best and know ourselves.
I like your reading.
Good, I'm glad.
By the way, did it answer the how?
No.
Louder?
No.
Oh, let me do that again.
The way I do
Oh.
it, but I like it.
I like it too.
Good, I'm glad we agree there.
We can have another column whether you like it or not.
I don't mind.
Right?
That stuff was taken out, this translation. Oh, really? Yeah, what you just read is not in here.
Oh, really?
Let me ask a simpler question. Is there one thing in the dialogue that he answers with a how? That's all. Hey, on the philosophical level, not the physical level, Good. You got one?
The Republic is a much longer work. He doesn't answer the how in that either.
Well, whether that's true or not might take a discussion.
Describes the public.
Because there's several hows.
Several hows where?
Well, I was just thinking of that part in the 9th book where he speaks of, if we're to understand all these matters, we have to get the view of the soul stripped to the body.
Then it does describe the dialogue.
So what do you make of this? Yeah, thank you for volunteering. Miss, what do you make of it?
I'm not sure. I'd like to see it.
Well, get help. You don't have to have all the answers. You do believe in helping a young lady in distress, chivalry, and all that stuff? Go ahead.
Well, I'm wondering if this is kind of a like are these gaps covered by other dialogues? That's what I'm wondering. Right? If every gap he's leaving out, he's like, oh yeah, here's a whole dialogue on the how. So.
Well, you don't need, really, you don't need the how, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, why?
I'm just wondering if the how might be tucked into this, that he's trying to give Alcibiades a puzzle. He's trying to give him a problem. And so as he said, after hatching a winged love in you, it is to be cherished and returned by its nestling. So I think if he was able to create this problem or this puzzle in Alcibiades, then it could be nurtured over time through dialogues with Socrates, which then could be part of the how.
Nice. I mean, that is the tone of this. Hey, let's keep on having dialogues, right? You got, hey, it's a hatchling, but now you got to grow up the hatchling.
Well, what are we going to do with it?
Put it at the very
Read Alcibiades too.
Put it at the very bottom of the cave, and call it the unfettering.
Okay. Let me give you a challenge. Now that you say this, how about shifting gears and we do something that on the surface is simple but presents all kinds of difficulties when you get into it, but worthwhile. Plato's great work, The Sophist.
Why did we skip all of a sudden? We didn't answer the question.
Why is it a great challenge? Because that word takes a whole bunch of meanings, doesn't it? Diotima, Socrates' teacher, he says she is a true sophist, because the word sophist comes from wisdom, doesn't it? The wise. But it's also sophistical when you give the appearance of wisdom and there's nothing genuine there. Therefore, shall we look at this and see there's a whole bunch of arguments. And it's all about the nature, true nature of being. And the one. What if in each one of these arguments, each one appears to be valid? That means no formal rules of logic have been broken. And each seems true, but is not. But maybe in this list there may be something in it that is true. Can you separate out The one from the other? Now, on this work, a whole bunch of people have done an awful lot of work in pushing Plato. More than the Parmenides, this work played a major role in framing what people have come to understand as Platonic. That's just a note of history. So therefore, there's a lot of historical precedence behind this. All right?
Is this supposed to solve our first Alcibiades problems?
Yeah, we're out of Alcibiades.
No, but
What?
is this supposed to help us to understand the Alcibiades or the how, for that matter?
No, I'm making it worse.
You're making it worse.
I just showed you how it's going to be worse.
Okay.
A whole bunch of arguments are going to appear valid. They're not. A bunch are going to seem true. They're not. And throughout it, there may be some that are true, but may appear false, but are true. Wouldn't that be rather curious?
Yeah.
That's the higher art of separating yourself from sophistry. It's like a koan study. If you grab it and you think it's true and it turns out false, how come you were fooled? Or if it appears false but it's true, you can't see the truth. Ever read it?
Just a little.
Good. Ever read it? Good. Good.
Cool.
We may reduce our attendance by at least 50% with this. This is going to be so frustrating, all right, that you're going to have to hold your breath to go through it. Now, we have some people who volunteered to help, so I want you to take down their names, all right? Mark Bartholomew said you can call him at any time with any kind of question you have about this, and he would be very willing to help.
All right, Mark.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, there.
Bartholio.
That's where we're going.
Yeah. Take a look at being. We're going to take a look at being.
Pardon?
We're going to take a look at that funny word, being, or
Yes.
existence.
Oh.
We're trying to figure out the game.
Oh, we're going to take a look at a couple of words. Being, substance, essence, non-being.
The one.
One. So to make sure you look at it, all right, if you can get in the pre-Socratics, read Milesius. Get into Milesius. Right? Truly, great thinker. He did a whole work, you see, on the problem of non-being. And if you're grounded in that, that'll help you, because he's going to introduce the idea of non-being. By the way, would you agree? Whatever being means, or existence, there's a whole bunch of things that have being. And especially, would you not agree? Some things have a strange kind of being. Like, have you ever gone to the Temple of the Rat?
Yeah.
Right?
Imaginable.
And everyone walks around with rat costumes? Agreed? the whole temple devoted to the rat. Right? Michael the rat, is that his name?
Yeah.
Right?
Mickey Mouse.
Okay. Look here, he's still a rat. What kind of being does Mickey Mouse have?
None.
He has an existence, doesn't he?
He's a figment of somebody's imagination.
Doesn't he? Well, look here. Suppose you can rank everything in the universe, right, in terms of then
Here.
then everything has being, then it's also a part as not being. Until you get pure non-being. What's the relationship between being and non-being? If all the things you can rank can be ranked in terms how much or how valid or how complete a being they have, then you're also agreeing that parallel this is a growth of non-being. Therefore, there must be a non-being of being.
Or being or non-being.
Does that make any sense?
No.
Yes, no.
A non-being of being, a non-being of being of being.
How about a being or non-being?
You're getting close.
How about a delusion?
Right. What do you think it's going to be like?
Great.
A headache. What prediction?
Now, it's going to give you a model. Make sure you take a look at the model. The model is an angler, fishing angler. Hunter. Watch the model. He's going to use it throughout the entire thing. Or it's going to look like he's using it throughout the whole thing, but that's only the appearance. He doesn't use it at all. But he may be using it, but it just appears that he is, maybe he's not. The whole thing has got this. So if you can thread your way through it, you're learning the dialectic negatively. That is, how not to be fooled by sophistry.
Nicely done. Thank you.
Okay?
Can I go back to the Alcibiades for a little?
Yeah.
The way I was thinking about this line.
Get everybody there?
Well, at 130, I don't know, 130D or E.
132?
130D or
Oh, I like 130B.
D.
D. D as in rabbit?
No, D is in dog.
that paragraph about the self itself.
Go ahead.
Well, so you made a clear argument that there are gaps and that it's not what it appears to be. But then there's this line, and this indeed for our purpose will perhaps suffice. So it looks like our task in reading the Alcibiades is to figure out what Socrates' purpose is in relation to Alcibiades. Right?
But perhaps that will be enough.
Yeah, perhaps it'll suffice for our purpose.
Wait a minute.
But so don't.
No, there's a higher goal, but for our goal, we'll take a lesser.
Yeah, so he has a lesser purpose. But isn't that what we want? If we understand that purpose, perhaps it would make sense of why there are.
I agree with you. I agree with you. So he did pick the lesser.
Right.
I agreed. And that helped us understand all the others.
No, but maybe if we...
Maybe he made a mistake and should have gone for the higher and not the lower.
But before we...
No, that'd be another gap.
No, but that would be a judgment we could make. But first, we would have to know what his lesser purpose is.
That's right. Hey, Pierre, what's the purpose for what you...
Of Socrates in dialoguing with Alcibiades. He doesn't have the higher purpose. He has a lower purpose. What is it?
Now you want to discover what motivated Plato to write this or Socrates to talk to him? I don't know.
Well, so, and then...
Unless it's said somewhere.
So that's what...
I don't know.
I think it's a grammar.
Here, jump in.
Hold on. So at 135...
135...
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm reading where Alcibiades says, in my translation, I adopt those words then for my own, and I shall add them to these further, that we shall be in danger, Socrates, of changing parts. I am assuming yours and you of bearing mine. For it is not possible for me to avoid the following, to avoid following you everywhere from this day forward. Assuming that Socrates has achieved his lower purpose, this would be the result, that he used sophistry to get Alcibiades to follow him.
Yeah, and he realizes that there's one obstacle that might block it.
The will of the people. But that, but that I understood as Socrates could get killed before he had a long enough time to deal with Alcibiades.
Yeah. By the way, how much did he succeed in this? Well, he showed him a lot of things, how to achieve a lot of things. So if he did die, he can go out and achieve them, since he was given a very good method in how to get each one of these things.
Well, but you can't decide on the success unless we nail down what the purpose was. And I'm putting forward that his purpose was to try.
I want you to know I agree with you.
Yeah, I know
Why?
when you agree. It doesn't mean it.
How shall we find out? How shall we find out his purpose?
Well, I don't know if it's more directly stated, but I'm going with this. If he succeeded in his purpose, what was the consequence? The consequence is stated in this statement by Alcibiades. He is now ready to follow him.
And his conclusion is that even though you may follow me, two things may not happen. The will of the state may overpower him, or both of them.
Yeah, and that's what...
And what else do they need?
The will of God.
The will of God.
That might have been.
Which he always gives freely to everyone. No. That's not true.
Alcibiades loses his life before Socrates does.
Oh,
so what you were just saying is...
Okay, that would work too, though.
Courage, what's that?
That would also work, because he lost his life fighting Syracuse on his... Or,
it was after that.
Yeah, but he fought Syracuse and then he flipped sides.
Yeah. Anyways, I was just saying, you're saying that's what happened, that the might of the state overwhelmed both Socrates and Alcibiades. Well, maybe you're right. If he lost his life because of the might of the state.
David, jump in.
Going back to Napoleon's purpose. I just think he was using the royal we. and that he was really just being polite and not putting all the pressure on Alcibiades, but saying, if you find your purpose and proceed in that manner, I don't have a whole quote, but I'm going to anticipate your question and say that still doesn't, it's still a gap, because that doesn't describe the purpose.
Pierre, there's a problem with that, though, and that is, just to address it, in the Greek, the personal pronouns for you and I are both used, so it's not the royal we.
I was just listening to what he's saying.
I think he's referring to our purpose, not the last one.
Oh, where?
130. D, whatever that was that I first read.
There's a purpose?
And this indeed for our purpose will perhaps suffice.
Sorry if I was mistaken. Who?
130 D or something.
Well, perhaps it is sufficient. No purpose. Anyways.
Thanks again.
Here, I take it that the dialogue turned Alcibiades around, and such that even Socrates says, for having hatched out a winged love in you, it will be cherished by it in turn. In the beginnings, everyone loved Alcibiades, he himself included loving himself. Now he's turning around and he's saying, I say that our characters seem likely to be reversed. For from this day forward, I shall not fail to follow you as you have followed me. Well, if that's a how, I shall do this.
Not a how.
It may not be enough, but
Pardon, it may not be enough.
But the dialogue itself.
Pardon, hold it. Why may it not be enough? Because if he continues this way of reasoning, will it help him?
Well, I don't know what Alcibiades does.
Okay, you can't. Okay.
Well, but he does waken the spirit of
Pardon me.
Of love.
If he continues the way he's doing it now, would you not agree there are going to be a bunch of gaps? Yes or no?
Yes, there's gaps, but does he achieve a purpose? Does he achieve an end?
Well, you don't ask me. What do you think? Well, come on.
He benefited Alcibiades.
Yeah, has he benefited him?
Yes.
Yes, he's changed because now he's willing to follow Socrates.
And Socrates agreed with
Okay.
him. Well, that's not a bad thing.
Well, I didn't say it was a bad thing.
Well, given where Alcibiades was, it looks like a major change. Here's a guy who wants to go off to war with some people and he doesn't have any knowledge of what he's going to do. And suddenly he wakes up to discover that he doesn't. He thinks he knows and he doesn't.
That's just what he says.
Is there anywhere in Plato where he describes, are there certain marks or characteristics of those who desire to enter into his game? Are there a set of characteristics or qualities for those who must enter into the game of philosophy that is a prerequisite to play the game? Are there any prerequisites in the symposium or Republic or anywhere?
Republic 6.
Yeah, well, Alcibiades fits, doesn't it?
No, he doesn't fit.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay, hold
He
on.
does change. I didn't say he didn't.
Okay, I'll just add another one. I didn't know that. By the way, among the people that are most likely to fail, does he pick one that's going to win or fail?
Given what he said at the end, he's not sure, but he doesn't want potential outcome. Possible outcome. Yeah, he sees that he's...
So he picks someone who's got the best qualifications and the background to play the game of philosophy? Oh, no, you said no. Do you find that curious, then?
No, he did say he has the character. It doesn't mean that he'll be able to...
I'm raising a set of questions, right, that all point to the same question that we started with. How many gaps? Is this another one?
Well,
if there are a list that we can draw up of the kinds of people who are most likely to be attracted to and continue the game of philosophy, does he match it? Given the symposium or the Republic or anything else?
Oh, in later dialogues? No.
Well, Regina just mentioned it, but she kind of backed off of it, that he doesn't have any distrust of his nature. Which seems to be saying that he thinks his nature is pretty good for this game.
Oh, but he's good at agreeing with Socrates.
What does that mean?
Isn't he? Because, would you not agree, he picks up on all of these gaps, doesn't he?
No.
Doesn't Alcibiades pick up on all of these gaps?
No.
Oh, no. Oh.
He's pretty good at agreeing with Socrates. He's a yes man.
So, do you see any value in reading this dialogue?
Of course, it's written by Plato.
Come on.
I don't think so.
We're not believers, though, just because it's written by Plato.
Just because you don't believe me, that doesn't mean I have trouble believing myself. I don't mind if you have trouble. I have more trouble than you have believing me.
Plus, right, there's a question of whether or not Plato ever wrote this, too, so... Look, please, can you give us a better answer than that?
Let me ask you a question. Does this appear to be an occasional goof in the book? Or does it run through the whole thing? Uh-oh. See, if there are only a couple, you might be able to do one thing or the other.
Then what are we reading Socrates for? Because he's stupid. He's following this guy, sees no character, and sees no reason to, and yet he's pursuing him. From day one, he's after him. Is it just his body?
Point taken. However, in most of the dialogues, I rarely see a character that ever really gets to the point where he could be said to be doing philosophy successfully. There's always seems to be some shortcoming, and in certain cases rather serious. So he hangs out with a bunch of guys who don't totally see what he's doing.
That's very important. Let me take that and push it in another way. Doesn't this show an excellent example of Socrates' daemon?
Well, it doesn't sound like it the way
what?
we're talking. I said it doesn't sound like it the way we're talking.
It doesn't sound like it?
That sounds like his daemon.
Well, just to turn up the volume.
Yeah, it needs to tell him more. His daimon is saying, look, I need to talk to you now.
Yeah, go ahead.
He didn't. He had an angelic opposition, the force of which you will someday understand. So he's prophetic there. But now, since it no longer opposes, I have come to you, as you see, and I am full of hope that for the future, too, it will not oppose. And so in the meantime, my observation has given me a pretty clear idea of your attitude towards your lovers, etc. So his daimon is...
And since it no longer opposes him, he might as well do it.
That's not what he's saying.
Right? I like that principle.
He doesn't say that.
Right? What?
He's not saying...
Pardon me, he does say it if you read it.
I don't know if you read it.
I mean, the guy, by the way, while you're looking for it, don't you like the qualifications? Everyone is completely disgusted by your arrogance You're overweening pride. You're so rich you lack nothing. Look at this. You have no friends. They've all deserted you. He's a great candidate for philosophy. Right?
Well, he's most in need.
And the reason why everybody hates you is that you turn around and you think everybody is your total inferior. That shows a nice, solid character for philosophy, doesn't it?
Where's Jesus when you need him?
Right? You fix them with care.
Well, absolutely.
What?
What are you going to do? Is philosophy going to ignore the worst possible person and just go after those talented ones that can be most easily advanced? I think not. There wouldn't be much wisdom or compassion or justice in Socrates if you let go of a guy like Alcibiades, would there?
Okay. All right, I'll go along.
Right? I mean, this guy could destroy the whole state, right? And did.
And he did.
Yeah, he did, anyways.
Well, that shows what a great guy he had as a teacher. Socrates, wasn't he?
Well, he said Pericles didn't help his son, so I don't know if that
No, okay. All right, might as well take a break and have a cup of coffee.
I'm not even dreaming.
Right?
You got a question over here.
Oh, good.
I have a question.
Hold it.
Louder.
What's the most brilliant?
No, I got to hear you.
What's the most brilliant light of being?
What is it?
The most brilliant light of being, because my dad's always talking about that.
Well, don't talk about your dad.
Come on.
Say it louder.
What's the most brilliant light of being?
Answer it.
But she was asking you.
No. I'm looking for help.
My answers obviously didn't cut it for her. She wanted a better answer.
I didn't get what he said. He makes no sense.
Answer. I need help.
That's a good question.
Well, when you discover what you are in the highest possible way, beyond what you could even imagine ahead of time, that's the most brilliant light of being. The highest experience that a human being can have. God, how God appears.
I won't quote it.
But you got her thinking.
The experience of ultimate reality being the good.
Plato does a really good job in Book 7 at the end of a little story about education. And he talks about getting to the highest part of education, of the soul, and seeing the good, which has this light that comes out of it. And this light that comes out of it is like, well, that's pretty high up in the idea of Platonic morality or Platonic life. You get really close to what it was you're supposed to be doing, which is seeking intelligence, mind, and truth. No, you read it. Shit, don't listen to me. Well, fart like me who hardly reads anything.
No, I was thinking that in terms
Seventh
of...
book.
That too, but I was thinking of the symposium where you take steps and you see beautiful bodies, and you love art, right?
Yeah.
And you see beautiful pictures and painting, and you draw beautiful paintings, right? And so there's beauty in bodies and in soul, and do you hear sometimes beautiful answers in people, like you listen and you ask your dad, and these are ideas that you're exploring.
Yeah.
Even that question is beautiful because you're curious about it. Is that fair?
Are you done?
Yeah.
What does it do to you when you ask that question to say, Pierre? Is it curious to you? And you're curious about it.
Or are you just asking?
But your dad doesn't give you the answer that you kind of would like to know about better, right?
Well, he's confused. confusing. I can't hear him through that beard.
Okay. But you notice that. You notice the difference, and yet you're puzzled about this idea.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's it do to you to be puzzled by it? You curious about
Makes
it?
me think.
Makes you think. And what's that like for you?
A little hard.
A little hard. Okay. But does it feel good or bad? Okay. So to go on, can I go on a little bit though? Okay. So you're curious about it and you're willing to kind of ask a couple of questions, like ask Pierre, right? To see if you can follow it up. And enough to see if you can make sense of it. And have you ever made sense of anything? Things that are clear? You've seen dreams that come together?
Yeah.
What do you like? Do you like that?
Yeah.
Do you like the state of mind it puts you in?
Yeah.
And, well, how does it make you feel when you're put in that state?
Like when I realize what dreams mean,
Yeah.
makes me think like, now I get it.
And then you do it. Right. That makes you feel how? Happy. And anything else? Not confused, clear?
Yeah.
Clear. And you like that state?
Yeah.
Ah. And you like to pursue that more so. And you can ask this question of what's the most brilliant mind of being? You'd like to have a clear answer to that, or get some clearer answer.